On this episode of The Whiskey Tornado, we review Traverse City Barrel Proof Rye. What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of The Whiskey Tornado. I'm your host, Lance. Today, we are reviewing a craft distillery. For those of you that have watched this channel for a while, you know that I get craft notes in a lot of craft whiskeys that I'm not particularly fond of. So I think you guys are going to be pleasantly surprised with this video. I don't want to spoil the review too soon, but this is a fantastic whiskey. Before we get into the review, let me quickly explain our scoring system to you guys. We have 7 categories. The first 2 categories are weighted since they're not as important, and that is presentation and availability. Then we move on to the nose, palate, finish, body, and value. Each category is scored 0 to 1, 0.5 being average. At the end, we add all those up. Any score of 3 or better is bar worthy, meaning it's safe to buy it and put it on your bar. Any score of 4 or better means that it's bunker worthy, meaning you should probably grab a couple extra bottles just in case the bourbon you love is no longer available. All right, guys, with all that being said, let's go into the presentation of Traverse City Barrel Proof Rye. All right, so looking at the bottle, I'm not sure how you guys feel about it. I think at its face value, you could look at this bottle and say that it's kind of boring, that it's kind of plain. There is something about it that I absolutely love. I love the font. I love the green presentation. And as we get into this review, you're going to see why I think the bottle is such a fantastic representation of what's in the bottle. I don't want to spoil the review, but right now we're going to give it a 0.8, which is a very high score on my review. And I'll just say that it kind of reminds me of a giant pine tree. And I think it is just such a perfect representation of the artful whiskey that's inside the bottle. All right, moving on to availability. Traverse City, it's a smaller distillery, and distribution is okay. In Illinois, I can get it quite frequently. Maybe not the barrel proof rye, but I do see Traverse City quite a bit. But the barrel proof rye specifically, not very available. We're going to give it a 0.3. All right, moving on to the important stuff. Let's get into the nose on this. For those of you that are interested, this is an 8-year-old rye, and it is 60.2% alcohol by volume. This specific bottle is a single barrel from Benny's, so it's actually a store pick. This is bottle 56 of 145. So they did not get many bottles out of this particular barrel. And, you know, there are some Traverse City rye offerings that were sourced from MGP. This is actually their distillate and their juice. So really interested to review this for you guys. All right, let's get into the nose. The first note that hits me is like this pine note, which again goes back to the presentation of the bottle. You know, it's just got this dark green kind of evergreen label and evergreen wax. And it just kind of reminds you of a pine tree, which is why I think the presentation is so good. It's kind of like setting you up for what you're about to taste. There's also on the nose like a spearmint note. But the thing that just stands out is just it's earthy, and not in a bad way, not in a crafty way. It's really quite pleasant and refreshing. It's like, I'm going to sound like such a dork, but it smells like a forest floor. Like very piney, spearmint. There's like a good like caramel vanilla note in there on the nose. This is a whiskey that you really need to take your time with, and you really need to sit down and explore. But it's so different. It veers off the path of your traditional rye. This is a rye drinker's rye. It is. I love it. I absolutely love the nose on this because it stands out. It's different. It's not your typical like 95.5 MGP rye that smells kind of citrusy, which I love. I love that, but I don't always want to be tasting the same thing. And this is a rye that is so different. This is a piece of art, and you can tell from the nose if you sit down and appreciate it. The nose, I'm going to give a 0.8. All right, moving on to the palate. Cheers, everybody. That 60.2% alcohol. Ooh, it gets you, but man, is it good. The first note, again, is that like, there's like a tobacco note, a really good, strong, sweet tobacco note. And then that like earthy, piney kind of note with some like underlying spearmint. Oh man, this is so beautiful. I'm going to take another sip. Yeah, it's like, there's like peppermint candy almost, earthy pine. You know what it really tastes like? And this is the craziest note that I've ever given on a whiskey. And you guys know I've given some crazy notes. But for those of you that hunt, they have these little discs you can put on your hat, and they cover your scent. And they have one specifically called an earth. The scent is earth. And you just hang it from your hat or your shirt, and it covers up your scent so deer can't smell you. And that is exactly what I'm tasting in this glass, with some added sweetness and tobacco notes, but that peppermint, that earthiness, that pine. Oh my gosh, it's beautiful. You know, what's really interesting about this is I've heard wine drinkers talk about terroir and how like a spirit can take on characteristics of the land that it was made in. And to me, I've never had a bourbon or a rye that I really felt took that on, and this is doing that for me. This has got so much terroir that it's gorgeous. I mean, when I think of Michigan, when I think of Traverse City, Michigan, up north, I think of pine trees, I think of forests, I think of Christmas, and this is that bottle. This is everything about that is in this bottle, which is quite amazing, and is really kind of blowing me away at what a wonderful piece of art this is. I don't know how they do it, but it's good. It's really good. We're going to take another sip. Oh, man. I could drink this stuff all day. It's really good. What I'm going to do on the palate as well is we are going to add a little bit of water. I'll add a little bit of water in a minute because I want to really explore the finish and the body on it. But the palate is so good, and I'm loving everything about it, and it's so different. It's not your typical rye. It's a rye drinker's rye. Has that terroir. It's like really takes on the characteristics of where it was made. I'm getting that pine tree, the representation from the bottle. I mean, it's really, really nice. We're going to give the palate a 0.8. I am absolutely loving it. All right, let's go on to the finish. And the finish is just that like peppery. It's got peppery spice, but also with that like peppermint candy. It almost makes you feel like if you inhale, it's going to be cold, which is crazy. And then it's just got that earthy finish that I am just loving, which is crazy. And there's no craft notes in this, like zero craft notes. It is just a beautiful 8-year-old rye. I'm going to give the finish a 0.8 too. Okay, moving on to the body. I mean, it is just so oily, so incredibly viscous, buttery even. The body's fantastic on this. I mean, just sticks to the glass. Really, really gorgeous. I'm going to give the body a 0.8. We're going 0.8s all down the line. All right, moving on to value. I paid $80 for this, so it's a store pick, but you got to think, you know, ryes are generally a little bit more expensive anyway, and this is an 8-year rye, and they only got 145 bottles out of the barrel, so the flavors are just super concentrated, super amazing. What's in the bottle is really, really nice. I'm going to give the value better than average for sure. We're going to give it a 0.7 on the value. All right, guys, so that brings the total score for Traverse City Barrel Proof Rye to a 4.45, making it bunker worthy. That's got to be one of the highest scores I've given a bourbon, or I'm sorry, a whiskey period, but definitely the highest score I've given a rye. You know, in the world of ryes, I'm going to add a little water to this to see what it does. In the world of ryes, they, to my palate, a lot of them taste kind of the same. I get a lot of those citrusy notes, sometimes dill notes, which I don't like. I'm not getting any dill notes in this at all. It's really beautiful, but to me, when I can find a bourbon that stands out, a rye or bourbon that stands out, that veers off the traditional road a little bit and is different. You know, I don't want to always be tasting brown sugar and caramel and vanilla. I want some different things in my whiskey. This is so unique. This is just screams Christmas whiskey to me. It is the ultimate Christmas whiskey. You know, the terroir that they were able to capture in this bottle, the characteristics of the land where it was made, is just so fantastic. I absolutely love it. Let's see what water's done to this. Oh, wow. So water in this made those peppermint candy kind of notes just explode. Kind of tamed down the earthiness, but the earthiness is still there. Really made this a peppermint candy forward rye. Really nice. Still getting those tobacco notes in there. Kind of rounded out the edges a little bit. So a little bit of water is good. I don't know that I need the water. I like the earthiness. I love that like earth wafer that I was talking about kind of taste. Those pine notes. I know it doesn't all sound good together, but I'm telling you, this is masterfully done. I think it's really, really good. Let me take one more sip with the water. Right before I took a sip, I caught a little bit of like musty wood on my nose, which I didn't catch before. But yeah, I mean, it rounds it out a little bit. The peppermint candy flavor kind of explodes a little bit. I like it better neat personally, but if it's too hot for you neat, a little water does make it very interesting, a little more candy forward. But wow, a 4.45, bunker worthy. If you guys see Traverse City Barrel Proof Rye, I would not hesitate to grab a bottle. Now, again, this is a single barrel, so I'm not sure how it's going to differ, but I've got to get this out to some of my Patreon members to try because it is really, really good. I'm amazed by the whole thing. The whole package is really a piece of art. You could go buy this on the shelf and not pay any attention to it and not realize that, you know, the evergreen labels, the evergreen wax, kind of start to lead you to expect those pine notes in the whiskey. And then, you know, just all the terroir that they captured, the characteristics of the land from Michigan, from up north in Michigan, and that forest notes and the peppermint candy and kind of making you think of Christmas. And it's so well done. This is the first Traverse City whiskey I've ever had, but now I've got to get some other stuff. And that's why I think, guys, it's so important to sit down and really break down a bourbon. I don't think it's always the best thing to enter these things in blind flights. If this is entered in a blind flight, I honestly don't know how it would do. I don't know if a lot of people are going to like this as much as I do because they're going to taste it and they're going to taste those kind of earthy notes and they're instantly going to be put off by it. But I can really appreciate what went into this and how representative it is of where it was made. And I just think it's fantastic. A+ to Traverse City. one of my favorite whiskeys, and it came from a craft distillery. You guys know me. Like, I get those craft notes in craft distilleries and I don't like them. This has none of that. It is fantastic. Consider me a Traverse City fan. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed the review. If you want to support the channel and become a member of our Patreon community, the link will be in the description below. We would be happy to have you on our bourbon crew. We do special tastings. I have a lot of our Patreon members on live streams. I do an advent calendar. They help me pick our whiskey of the year every year. So a lot of fun things go on in our Patreon community, and it helps support the channel, helps me get things like lights and lenses and expensive microphones and all those kind of things. But anyway, I really, really love you guys. Thank you for all the support. I hope you enjoyed the review. If you guys see Traverse City Barrel Proof Rye, do not hesitate to get it. Cheers, everybody.